everyone, wanted to share with you some treasures I got from the thrift store the other day, and also a wonderful recipe for Pyrex-Baked peasant bread. It is the easiest, most delicious bread. I know everyone says that, but I'm not a baker, and even our first batch of this, my 8-year-old daughter made. So we are going to get the dough ready and use my newly found vintage Pyrex to bake it in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take 2 cups of lukewarm water and we're going to proof the yeast with 2 teaspoons of sugar. So I am just using the packaged dry yeast from Aldi. I'm going to link the original recipe down below, and she uses 2 teaspoons, I believe, of just bulk yeast that she uses for her bread making. So let's get our water here. 2 teaspoons of sugar. And our yeast. So we're going to let that proof for about 10 minutes or so. And while that's proofing, we can go ahead and measure out the dry ingredients. Again, this is such a simple recipe, so we're only going to use two teaspoons of kosher salt, and 4 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm actually going to make this a little easier on myself. Four cups of flour. Now, I may not have mentioned, this is a no-knead dough, so it's going to be a very wet dough, but like I said, there's no knead, so it's super simple, doesn't make a big mess, and it actually comes together pretty quickly. Alright, I'm just going to stir this around and get that salt incorporated into the flour. And once the yeast is proofed, we'll add that in. All right, the yeast is nice and foamy. I guess you can see that. And this is the hardest part of the recipe. You have to stir the yeast and water in with the flour and salt. Seriously, that's all that this recipe requires. And while we're stirring it in, I'm actually going to preheat my oven to 350 for just 1 minute, just to warm it up just a little bit for the first rise. So I'm just going to pour that in there. Let's see if you can see that a little better. Alright, so I'm turning off my oven. There is the dough. Just a nice wet dough, nothing too firm. We're going to loosely cover this with plastic wrap, put it in the oven for an hour first rise. See you in a minute. All right, the first rise is almost complete, and I'm going to butter. This is actually a 2.5 quart Pyrex bowl. In the original recipe, I think it's Alexandra's Kitchen, she uses 2 1-quart glass bowls that are from the vintage Cinderella pattern, I think is what it is. I used this one the other night, and it turned out perfectly, even though it's a little larger than what she suggests. She suggests using a 2-quart bowl. I just don't let it rise as high as she does in her recipe. I let it rise to maybe about right here. So we're going to butter it up, which makes everything delicious. Actually, I'm just going to use all that for the paper too. Eliana loves this part because she gets to get greasy. So I'm just going to butter the entire bowl. I'm going to make sure the whole thing's covered. All right. There is the dough. You can see that it's doubled in size. Oh, it smells so good. So this part of the process is a little unique because the dough is so wet. Alexandra suggests punching it down with 2 forks, and she just kind of pulls it away from the side of the bowl to let some of the air out from the first rise. And if you're going to make 2 smaller loaves, she uses the forks to also separate the dough and transfer it to the bowl. So make sure to watch the videos that she has showing her technique. All right. And that is it. How simple is that? So we're just going to now transfer the dough to the greased Pyrex and let it rise a second time. Now, in a smaller bowl, the rise time is only about 20 to 30 minutes max. It takes a little longer. Like I said, I used the larger bowl. But I think that just shows how versatile this recipe is. You know, you can bake it in any kind of glassware bowl that you have, no matter the size. And just adjust the rise time a little bit. All right. So there you have it. And for this rise, we just leave it out on the counter. I am going to set my timer for about 30 minutes and just come back and check it and see how it is. If it needs longer, we'll give it a little bit of extra time. If not, we'll throw it in the oven, and I'll see you in 30 minutes. All right, I actually let it rise for about 45 minutes, but again, I'm using a much larger dish. This is a 2.5 quart dish than what's called for in the original recipe. So that's why my rise time's a little longer. But you can see I just let it rise just a little bit below the edge of the Pyrex bowl, and it's going into the oven. I'm preheating it right now. It's at 395. It's going to be 425 for 15 minutes, and then we knock it down to 375 for 15 more. So I will see you in a few minutes with some warm, fresh bread. It smells so good already. All right, we just did another 15 minutes at 375, and the bread should be ready to come out. Just want to tell you, if you remove your bread and you find that it's maybe not as golden as you'd like, maybe it's still a little blonde, once you've taken it out of the Pyrex glass, the original cook said that you can just put it straight back into the oven without the baking glass. And just put the loaf right back into the oven to brown up a little more. if you find that it's a little underdone when you pull it out. So let's see. Probably should find some pot holders. All right, let's see how this turned out. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. Now remember, mine looks a little different because I'm using a larger Pyrex bowl. I'm using 2.5 quart. So yours will probably rise over the Pyrex bowl if you're using smaller bowls, or maybe making the half loaves. All right, so let's see if we can get this to turn out. Oh my goodness, look at that, like a charm. And you just see where the butter's browned around the dish. It's easy to clean up. Goodness, I wish you guys could smell this. Let's turn off the oven. Oh, it is just like heavenly. It gets a really pretty crust on the outside from the butter, and I'm going to let it cool about 10 minutes, and then I'll slice it up for you. All right, I couldn't stand it. I think I maybe waited 8 minutes, so it just smells so stinking good. This is 8 minutes. Oh my goodness. Look at that. 8 minutes of cooling time. Oh, it's still steaming. This is ridiculous. Oh, can you guys see that? So look at this beautiful bread. And how simple was that? You don't even need a loaf pan. And oh my goodness, this is, I mean, it's even great for sandwiches. I wish I had some homemade pimento cheese today. So there you have it. Peasant bread baked in Pyrex. Hope the recipe is a winner for you too. And you guys take care.